Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special live edition of Shawn Yancey World. Here we are on the eve of the 2020 presidential vote. As you know, tomorrow our nation will either re-elect President Donald Trump or they will elect Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Women of color have played a major role in this election cycle, from the campaign trail to communities nationwide working to educate, organize, and just get out the vote. Joining me tonight to talk about the power of the Black women's vote are three women with diverse backgrounds in the political process. Please help me welcome all of them tonight. They're going to be joining us. First, I want to introduce you to the lady that many of you know right now. We're talking about the former mayor of Baltimore, Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, who is also currently a, what do we call you, Democratic political strategist. Thanks so much for joining us.
It is my pleasure. It's wonderful.
All right. Also, many of you are very familiar with this face right here, the voice in the morning. She is one of the co-hosts of the Joe Claire Morning Show at WPGC 95.5 here in Washington, D.C. Poet, thank you so much for joining us.
Be in your presence. Congratulations on your show. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Poet. And also joining us tonight is Nikidra, and I want to make sure I said your name right, girl. Say your name for me again.
It's Nikidra Robinson, but everyone calls me Nike, like the goddess.
Nike.
Yes, you got it, Shawn.
Nike is the founder of Black Girls Vote. Ladies, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. An important issue, but before we get started, I want to say cheers to all of you. I hope you all brought a beverage of choice tonight. If you did not, there we go. All right, cheers to all of you, whatever's in your glass. We're talking about the importance of the Black women vote tonight, the 2020 election. You guys all know Black women have played a key role in voting since we earned the right to vote many, many years ago. But this election feels a lot different. Stephanie, I'm going to start with you. How important and how critical is the Black woman's vote?
So I think we've seen over the past few national elections that the Black woman's vote has really changed the course of history. You saw it in Georgia, you've seen it in other states where we've mobilized and we've made our voices heard. We're the strongest voting bloc in the Democratic Party, and I think the Democratic Party is finally starting to acknowledge that and give us our props.
Let me ask you, Poet. You are active in the community in all different realms, dealing with foster children. You are trying to end gun violence in our community. When you've been out talking to people in your neighborhood, what do you like to call your group? Tell me what you like to call
We are the village, and y'all are all my village cousins.
You're out talking to your village. What are you hearing back from them about the importance of the Black woman vote?
I think just to take it back to what Stephanie said, Black women do more than vote. We're normally the active engine behind everything. So when the mama of the block comes out, the auntie of the block comes out, people are going to come out. Why? Because we're a trusted adult. We are a trusted space. So the fact that I could come out and say, I'll take you to the polls, I'll take you to drop off your ballot, tell me if you have some other people, they trust that. And I think you don't really have to look any further than your job. For anyone that's watching, you see a Black woman leading every day that doesn't have the title, doesn't get the salary, doesn't get the kudos. Stephanie Rawlings-Blake was doing mayoral things before she became the mayor. So I think for us, we're finally getting to see what we know to be the true narrative. What has been fed to people is that normally it's someone else leading the charge and we help. There have been so many instances where we've led from the civil rights movement to now. Our stories aren't really told. You know what I mean? We talk women's voting, but when was the last time somebody talked about Mary Church Terrell, who was instrumental in us getting the right to vote coming down into the 60s? Because on August 26th of 1920, we didn't get the right to vote with everybody else. So I just think for right now, we are showing and proving the narrative that we know to be true, that is not necessarily screamed from the rooftops. Let Black women lead and watch what happens.
Amen. All right, Nike, I'm going to let you jump in on that. I saw you snapping there.
Now just let Poet just drop some wisdom and dropping that poetry on us. No, she's absolutely right. And I think that even this year, you know, we've heard so many people were celebrating 100 years of our right to vote, but we have to look back historically. That did not mean for us. And so some of us are kind of, you know, torn. Should I be celebrating 100 years when we know that it was Black women on the front lines? Me as a woman of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we know that that was one of our first acts of service, was participating in the Women's Suffrage March, even though we did not get our right to vote. And so as Poet said, and as Stephanie said, Black women, we show up time and time again, relentlessness, and we are there, and we know that we are leaders. And not only will we show up to the polls, we'll bring others to the polls with us. Ironically, I just left an event at a polling location in Baltimore with Black Girls Vote Our Team. And then the councilman there, he said, you know, it's been dead all week, but you guys brought so much energy. That's what we do. You know, President Obama did the shot, said, that's what I do. That's what Black women do, right? We motivate people, we encourage them, we get them out. But more importantly, we lead with love. And, you know, and this election is so critical. And we know that as Black women who are going to show up time and time again, but we want to make sure as we move forward that Black women are being heard, but that's being heard through the policy decisions that are being made in our communities.
I want to talk about us being heard and how we're being perceived. I want to discuss recently the 6th annual poll from the Black Women's Roundtable in Essence Magazine came out, and there were some of the key findings. I'm going to mention some of them to you and then get your response to them. Overwhelmingly, this poll found that 95% of Black women said they were going to vote in this election. They said Black women are overwhelmingly concerned about safety and stability when it comes to affecting the Black family. Black women said racism, a rise in hate crimes, corruption, government, and voter rights and suppression tactics were key issues that were threatening our democracy right there. I'm going to go back to the first one, that 95% of Black women are expected to vote in this election. Stephanie, does that surprise you at all?
It doesn't surprise me at all. Poet was talking about our place in history and how we're often overlooked in the history books. I feel like Black women are the grass and the roots. We're in the grassroots movement. So this does not surprise me. We vote and we encourage others to vote. And the issues that you talked about, not just the numbers of us coming out, but the issues that we care about are issues that are important at our kitchen tables. They're important in our homes, to our families, to our children. So it does not surprise me at all. And my hope is that our allies will show up in the same way. Like, you know, I was happy to see the Women's March on Washington after the president's inauguration with, you know, led by predominantly majority women. But, you know, to me, they voted 53% for Trump. So, like, you know, y'all go ahead and collect y'all's votes because we got it. Like, we're strong. We understand. Like, the 95% of the African-American women that are coming out, we don't have to worry about 53% of them voting for anybody other than Biden.
And you bring up a good point, and I will go back to that. In 2016, for the 2016 election, the Black community did not turn out in the typical numbers. In fact, turnout declined for that particular election for the first time in 20 years, but Black women's vote was incredibly high. But then, just like what you mentioned, there was an incredible amount of white women voters who said they were going to vote Democrat, who changed at the last minute and voted for Donald Trump. So this time around, it looks like, we will know maybe tomorrow or in the next few days after that. But as of this morning, a record 93 million Americans have already cast their early voting ballots, which I thought was astounding. What did you take away from that?
I loved it. I love that people are showing up in the way that they haven't. I live in Southeast DC. It hurt my heart to find out that in the 2016 election, only 18% of the registered voters in Ward 8 showed up to vote. I made it my personal mission to come out and let me find out why. What stopped you? What did you see? What are you reading? What information are we not giving on air? What are we not sharing with you? Am I not hooking you up with the Nikes and the Stephanies and the Shawns of the world because maybe you don't see the bigger picture? The other point I'd like to make is when it comes to Black women, let's talk about it. While there was that shown in 2016, let's talk about 2012. When we clinched Ohio, we clinched Pennsylvania, we clinched Florida. So we know our power. I think what really happened in 2016 was what we're kind of seeing this election cycle, just at a higher vibration, which is if you feed people the right things and you make them, if you make it look janky enough, then even my Black girl magic can't clean that. You know, I had somebody pulling hot sauce out of a bag because it was a hot line in a song. It looked fake to me. And what you will learn about people is that when we lead, they're also watching us. I saw for all of the women that voted, I saw a lot of us fall back like you trying to play me. And when you play me, you play my tribe. And you know, Mama Bear don't mess with her cubs. So I am hoping in this moment, as we look at the London Breeds and the folks that we voted into office, who are making so many changes and such big changes, as Nike said, in policy and legislation, now it's kind of like you can't deny us. You can't. You can't look at the women who are helping push forth Biden Harris and not see what they've done leading up into this moment. So, you know, for me, what is my grandmother always say? It's the chicken coming home to roost.
Nike, I'm just curious, when your organization, Black Girls Vote, is out there trying to mobilize people to vote, get people to go to the polls, are you hearing some of the same things that you just heard from Poet and that you heard from Stephanie? What are they saying to you?
You know what? Both Stephanie and Poet were dead on. And what we're finding is that you have to meet people where they are. You cannot talk at them. You have to talk to them. And there are so many things that are happening within our community that are pain points, that are troubling people. And so when you're asking them, you know, what's troubling you? What's keeping you up at night? And tying that into policy, they understand how that putting someone into office impacts them and impacts their community and their household. And so when we look at, you know, whether it's this election or, you know, 2020 or 2016, as we're in the middle of a global pandemic, right? And so all of us have been impacted by that, this global pandemic. So it's just a matter of how do we, at this moment, who do we want to lead us in the next 4 years? And you know, first and foremost, how the decision maker will make those decisions, whether it's you got $1,200 and some folks, when we talk about universal basic income, they were like, we should be getting $2,000 a month. So those are the policy decisions that are impacting us and our community day in and day out.
I agree with you. Stephanie, you, out of all of us, are the only one who has been in political office. You've been the mayor of Baltimore. You were the 73rd president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the first Black woman to ever hold that position. You started your political career when you were just 25 years old, when you were elected to the Baltimore City Council.
Long ago.
I think the last 4 years, we have seen also a rise in the number of women who are running for political office and winning. What do you think is sparking that sort of activism?
So I'll say, when I was little, my father used to take me around and introduce me to powerful Black women in our community. I remember his mentor was a state senator, Verda Welcome, very well respected in our community. Lena K. Lee. He took me when the first African-American woman was sworn into the circuit court, Judge Hubbard. He took me to her swearing in, where I shook the hand of Juanita Jackson Mitchell. I still remember the squeeze that she gave me when my father told her that I wanted to be a lawyer as well. And when he did that, he was setting in motion a plan for me, that I could be what I saw in those women. And that's what's happening now. You're seeing women seek office because they've seen women do it. They see that you can have a family and be in elected office. You can, have a career and, and run for the school board or the city council and other things. So, the more we see us in these positions, the more women will follow in our footsteps.
I'm just curious, who inspired you, Poet? Who inspired you to get active and use your voice?
So it's threefold. One would just be my upbringing. Growing up in foster care, you come across a lot of different personalities. I remember the Miss Fullwood from the Ionia Whipper home, who told me, regardless of me living in a group home, I was going to do this, I was going to accomplish that, I was going to do this. Meeting Dr. Justine Love, who came with her sorority to teach us how to cook and how to balance checkbooks, who I then bumped into my first night doing overnights at PGC, who reminded me, if you need something, I got you, call me no matter what. And then sitting down and having conversations with these people. When Justine told me how her father took her to the first March on Washington, so she was going with her daughter and her granddaughter to bridge that gap, and just telling me the stories of the things that she's experienced. The foster parents that took me in at 15, Patricia Taylor would be my third. At 75, she told me about being out and having water hoses turned on her and her friends, dogs being sick on them. So when you hear those stories, when you know the cloth that you're cut from, it's easy to walk. It's easier, to Stephanie's point, to walk in your purpose. They've always told me to be an informed voter. You ask why you think so many women are being voted in now. Black women been running. They weren't seen because we were kind of force-fed who should be in this space or that place or running. And when you take the blinders off, you realize that a lot of the women that are running, you see your aunt that against all odds got her degree. You see your mama that out of $1.15, y'all was still living high on the hog. You see those strong women around you in these women, and then you champion and you push for them.
Amen. Yes, yes, you do. We stand on the shoulders of so many women, and it was their what they were doing in front of us that inspired us. Nike, who or what inspired you to start Black Girls Vote?
You know, life happened. I would definitely say life happened to me. You know, I live in Baltimore when, you know, Stephanie was dealing with the riots of Freddie Gray, as people were watching all over the world. That was our neighborhood, my home. And that was one of the things. And people may not have loved the way the young people responded, but I said it's young people coming together and organizing, right, in a matter of minutes. Not only did that happen, you know, I had a good government job, as I would say, my GGJ, but I was a political appointee, and I went to work one day and I lost my job. And it's because of, you know, changing administrations. But as a Black woman, oftentimes as Black women currently at 84% of breadwinners or co-breadwinners, you are leading your household. And so for me, I did not have a job. And, you know, I cried. Like, I was like, what am I going to do? And even though I thought of the concept Black Girls Vote, because I knew we were on the brinks of 2016, you know, the election, I still didn't move on it. I didn't move on it. But in August of that same year, there was a murder that happened directly across the street from me. And as, again, a single Black woman coming home late at night in the wee hours, you know, you never know what's going on. When someone got murdered, the detectives, when they knocked on my door, they said it looked like a drug transaction that had gone bad. And in that year, like in Baltimore, we have a lot of murders that happen. I said, you know, what can we do collectively as Black women come together and just mobilize, start talking about policy, but more importantly, getting young Black girls. And so not only was that if the straw that broke the camel's back, the murder, but just looking at the next generation coming behind us and how these young girls are bad and they are not playing and they are asking for policy, right? I'm inspired by Stephanie's daughter, the Sophias of the world, right? The young college girls on these campuses who are ready and say, you know what? I'm not my mother. I'm not the generation ahead of me. I'm different. You have to show up differently. And so those are things that inspire me, and they continue to inspire me to keep going because, as you know, and all of us know, this work is not easy. I, you know, give my hat off to Stephanie, who ran for office and served at 25 years old. I tell her all the time, like, I cannot imagine at 25 years old up until then carrying so many people on your back and so many people in your staff, your family, and everyone's constantly pulling at you. And that's what we do as Black women. Same thing with you, poet. In media, people are constantly pouring and pulling from you, and who's pouring into us. And as Black women, we need more people to support us. And so for me, I just know that I'm a vessel here to point to other Black women to get us mobilized and start to organize more in demanding things in exchange for our votes.
And that's exactly what we should be doing. Stephanie, let me ask you, as a mom, a lot of times we hear from young people, and I want to get your perspective first. We hear from young people that, why should I vote? Because my vote doesn't matter. And I want to share, during the first election for Barack Obama, my oldest son was for the first time old enough to vote. So he went to the polls with me that day, and we voted together. This past election, he voted, and he said to me afterwards, Mom, I feel like my vote didn't matter. It didn't count because, you know, the Electoral College says one thing, the popular vote was something else. What's the point of voting? How do you answer people who are in that space right now? Because tomorrow there's still a lot of people who need to vote. What do you say to people who are in that space watching right now?
I think if you went through the 2016 election and you still believe that your, the last election, you still believe your vote doesn't count, you miss the vote, because you saw in places like Michigan, I think that it was just a handful of votes per precinct changed the outcome of the election. So every single vote counts. We know that our system is probably the best in the world, but it's not perfect. The Electoral College has its pros and its cons, and one of the cons is it's possible for a president to be elected, duly elected, without having the the majority of the people in the country vote for them. But that's why we all have to come out to vote, because we need all of those states to to be able to match up the majority of the votes, so we can get those electoral college votes on board. We need to make sure everybody comes out, so there's no excuse, there's no room for the electoral college not to match up. If we all come out to vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you say to your village?
I am with Nike. I meet them where they are. What was funny to me was to watch people down the way that people chose to speak to people that normally wouldn't come to the polls. Yeah. I'm not sure if y'all saw the stripper video, get your booty to the polls. In facts that a lot of the things that you're upset about, an AG not charging that road cop, you voted that AG in the office. So it was funny to watch people down the way that we really do have to meet people. Everybody will not be in the same space. To my village, I always give examples. People who are mad that, there are 200,000 people east of the river and we still only have 2 grocery stores. What are your ANCs and your council members doing? You feel like you're getting pushed out by gentrification? What is your mayor doing? These are where your votes matter. And now that you didn't vote and you didn't take part of the process, you don't really get to complain. Mm-hmm. And then I also showed them ways and in steps of how your vote did matter, down to the simplest thing, whether it was voting for what was for dinner, your vote counted. Down to when you voted at school and your homeboy became class president or prom king. So with Nike, when I say I meet them where they are. When they tell me why they don't, I find out how to connect that to something that affects them right now. What you make an hour, who you vote for is going to determine that. Mm-hmm. You want to see police reform. You want to end that law enforcement bill of rights. You want to end qualified immunity. Let's see let me walk you through how your vote transcends into this. And I think what we're seeing now is, as we see these new people taking office, as we see things changing, that's the spark to keep feeding our youth that haven't seen it. And be mindful of what you're telling our babies, because most of them think their vote don't matter because they've heard their elders and their parents say their votes don't matter, or this is nothing. And remember, we have to lead by example. So that would be my best advice, and hopefully that helps.
And if I could, Shawn, I just add one thing. It's also what to do after you vote, because voting puts people in office, but then you have to show up and hold them accountable. You talked about the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights, and I'll never forget being in Annapolis before the death of Freddie Gray, trying to fight for the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights reform. Simple steps that would have made it more possible for my police chief to hold bad cops accountable for wrongdoing. And I couldn't get any of the legislators to support it. Why? Because the police union were down there and I was down there virtually by myself. Yeah. And I remember how disheartened I was, even when the Legislative Black Caucus wouldn't hold a vote on whether to support the reforms. Now, after the death of Freddie Gray, as Elijah Cummings would say, lottie-dottie, and everybody was on board with changing it. But when it mattered, when it could have shown the people in my community that change was coming, that we were going to hold bad cops accountable, nobody was there. So we have to do more than just vote. After we vote, we have to show up and hold people accountable and support the good work that's out there. It's so easy to say that nothing is done when you're not doing anything.
You're absolutely right, Stephanie. I know you're coming to me next, Shawn, but it's not only just showing up, but teaching people how to show up, right? Because people don't know how, and it's really educating people. And when you talk about policy and government, it can be a very intimidating thing, but we have to break things down in layman terms, right? And showing up could just be picking up the phone and calling a legislator, right? Our elders, they can't be out on the front lines as they once were, but they would love to type a phone line, right? And calling and calling and calling. Right. But those are the little things that making it so relatable to them, so that people feel empowered, as Poet was just talking about. Meeting people where they are, it's empowered them, because people want to feel like they matter. I want to feel like I matter. Everyone on here wants to feel like they matter, and your efforts are not done in vain. And so once we do that consistently and people start to see the little changes, it gives them a little bit of hope, right? A little bit of hope can go a long way. And it's how do we collectively come together and organize? So when you have an elected official, as Stephanie just mentioned, when she was out there on the front lines, not having an army behind you, that is very discouraging, because again, as Black women, we're often feel like, who's there? Who are our allies? As you mentioned before in the beginning, we were shocked to see that 54% of white women showed up and voted for Donald Trump. You would think those are our allies. Joanne Reed said it best for Black America when President Obama was elected in 2008 and 2012. He said, yes, this is a moment for Black people. And in 2016, you're thinking, like, this is going to be a moment for women. That didn't happen, right? And so we're looking at, wait. Who's with us as Black women in this fight? So we have to lean on each other more times than not. And as Black women, we have the power to influence our brothers, our sons, our husbands to join us in those, because those are our allies. Because we know that systematically, so many of us, our brothers, our husbands, have been exiled from a system where they can't get those government grants, those loans for businesses. So for us as Black women, we're showing up and giving them the access that they have been denied because of systematic racism. So collectively, we're each other's allies, and we must continue to show up and show out for each other.
I want to know what you think. You said in 2012, it was a moment for Black people. 2016 was supposed to be for women. What do you think is going to be our defining this moment for us here in 2020? COVID aside, but I'm just specifically talking about as it relates to this election. I know it's hard to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Anybody want to jump in on that?
I'm going to go with human decency.
Okay.
I'm the human decency and love. There has been a line drawn in the sand. And because of my spiritual background and how God loves me with all her might, I know that is what's changing people. That's why we see that 80% of the people collectively that voted in 2016 have already voted early. There's a human decency to it now. And you are left with deciding, I'm not sure if this is going to tell my age. Remember Choose Your Own Adventure books? I tell my students and my mentees this all the time. Choose your own adventure. In 2016, you chose your own adventure, even if you chose not to vote. In 2020, what we doing? What are we doing? And I think it's leading by just human decency. What don't you want to see? I don't just see somebody who is from the Latina X community in a cage. I instantly see my niece London, who's only 8. And what would happen if she's separated? I'm not just, my father's name is George Taylor. Every time I had to talk about George Floyd on air, it struck me different. This is a human decency that's leading us to the polls. What kind of world do we want to be? And are we going to talk it like we walk it or no? And right now we are talking it like we walk it. And we're going to show how we want to, who we want leading and who we don't. I can't wait for tomorrow. I cannot wait. Got my cocktail ready. I can't wait.
Anybody else want to jump in on that?
I agree. It's about human decency. It is about what you believe about our country. You know, it upsets my spirit when I hear about people talking about being patriots and they're trying to suppress our vote. When they talk about believing in our Constitution, yet they're trying to not just suppress our, like erase our vote in court on a daily basis, trying to disqualify not, you know, whole swaths of voters, but specifically Democratic voters, you know, because you can't love our Constitution, believe in our Constitution, our country, and do those things. So I think, as Poet said, it's about human decency and who we say we are as Americans. And if we truly believe that we are the United States of America, we need to do better. There's no one. We do not win as a divided country.
At all.
Our enemies. It's almost, we have lulled ourselves into this false sense of security that we have the luxury of acting as if we do not have enemies in this world. Our enemies are reveling in the chaos that has been created in this last 4 years. And we have to come together as a country and be who we say we are as a united country. We don't have to love I shouldn't say that. You don't have to like everybody. You don't have to agree with everybody, but we have to find a way to respect each other's differences of opinion, differences, you know, who we are, and continue to find ways to be Americans and be strong as a unified country.
Agreed. Ladies, before we wind things down, I want to talk about, you know, I don't want to use necessarily the word solutions, but Stephanie, I think you already hit on what do we do after the election is over? How do we move where we are right now forward after we get past tomorrow, no matter what happens? How do we continue to keep this momentum? How do we continue to mobilize? How do we continue to get people who want to be active and involved in this process? Nike?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, first and foremost, invest in Black women, right? When we talk about Black women who are running for office, we look at 2016 and even now, how are we getting funded for running for those offices? Black women have the hardest time raising capital because who do we go to first? Our family members, our friends, and our support to give us capital to support us. And if we're looking at, the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap within our community, it's real. So we need to make sure that people are investing in Black women who want to run for office, supporting Black women in their businesses, and investing in Black women all over in so many different fronts. And, unlike others for tomorrow, I think it's going to be, I think what we're going to see, and this is my prediction, I am not convinced that more people, particularly white women, are going to go towards a Biden Kamala ticket, just because I think more people are leaning towards, they want to protect that economics. And that's what this community is built on. Our country is based on economics and capitalism, right? And so when we talk about that, what's happening in our community, even the rallies and things are happening, they're using so many tactics to suppress our vote and instill fear in some communities. So for me, I think for us as Black women, what we'll do and continue to do is show up in droves, but more than we've done before. And I think that's going to be the determinant factor, because I do see that Black men there a little bit, we don't know which way they're going to land. You're seeing more things in the press about, and again, Black Girls Over, a nonpartisan organization, right? But just seeing how there's so many tactics and things that are happening to sway votes from either way. And so I think what we're going to see in the next few weeks is a lot of litigation. We don't know what the outcome will be, but more importantly, whatever you want to get done, continue to invest in Black women.
Let me just jump in real quick, because you brought up a good point. We were talking about economics and which way people are learning. Recently, in recent days, I know you have all seen Ice Cube, Lil Wayne, 50 Cent.
Yep.
Pledge their support for
Wayne, right?
Right. And they said it's about economics, but I think the reality is the average American doesn't live the same life that they do. And like you said, everything can't be about what people who make millions and billions of dollars a year, but there are billionaires who are not focused on that. I'm just curious. I think there's a lot of concern that their response or their endorsements or whatever they've said recently will affect people as they go to the polls. What do you want to say to people out there who are looking at what these high-profile musicians and rappers have said recently? Poet, you want to jump in?
Trash, and don't follow the trash. It's trash. Let me tell you two things, Village. Anything that somebody going to do with their platinum plan come January of 2021, if they ain't done it over the past 4 years, it's just smoke and mirrors. And in my mind, I expect people who are so out of touch with the people that gave them their millions to even say that BS, they don't stand for nothing that I stand for anyway. Was I hurt as an Ice Cube and Lil Wayne fan? Hell, as a Waka Flocka fan. Yes. And then, if anything, was inspired and encouraged.
Wait, did you say Waka Flocka's in on it too?
Yes,
No. I didn't see Waka yet. I didn't see that. Poet's dropping the breaking news. I missed that one.
So, because I know that we have a celebrity-driven culture. Mm-hmm. Celebrities drive a lot of things. Beyonce's getting dragged right now for showing her voting sticker in her outfit with her Biden hair and mask, when we've been asking where you've been, sis, for about 5 years now. So I think that we give a lot more credit to the celebrities than we do to the people voting. They're not dumb. They know you are speaking of a space where, regardless of what you may think, at the end of the day, they don't see you for your millions. They see you for exactly what they're trying to use you for, which is a way to slice up this pie even more. And we know that a wasted vote or a thrown away vote is really a vote for somebody that you may not want in office. So I haven't reported on it. I ain't poured no energy into it, because I feel like with my Black girl magic, if I sprinkle it, then it becomes something. If I don't, then it stays exactly where it should be. Trash and more trash.
Oh, But I do think to this point, I do think that more so Black people collectively, we do need to look at being independents, right? And I think that as far as independent party, and meaning so that we have to make sure that people are working in exchange for our vote. No, do I think the tactics that are happening like literally weeks before the election are not cool? And it can cause a lot of confusion, absolutely. But I think strategically, as we talk about the policy, it's all about policy, you guys. I do not know any wealthy people that do not play politics, right? Or who are not involved in some way, shape, or form. So I think it is time for us to start talking about how do we organize and start demanding things in exchange for our vote. And that may look like being more registered independents, right? And we know where some folks may register under Republic, whatever that may be, whatever your beliefs are, but making sure that people do not take our votes for granted. Because time and time again, we're tired of being taken for granted. We're tired. And so how do you do that? You have to give folks competition, make them work for your vote. And so I'm not saying to pull a move like this a few weeks before the election to say, this is what I'm going to do. It's all tactics. And as Poe just said, smoke and mirrors, but look at people, what they have done, but then moving forward collectively as we're organizing and start getting some of those promises fulfilled and not coming back 4 years from now and saying, oh, I did this, or this is what I want to do. No, we need to see it consistently. And I love, street renamings, folks can their streets renamed symbolism, but no, we need concrete policy with dollars and metrics behind it. I want to say how many millions of dollars are going to go to HBCUs, how many millions of dollars are going to support Black women businesses, because we are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, but a lot of us are solo entrepreneurs, right? We don't have the technical assistance. We don't have the support that other communities have. So how many dollars? Not that improve, that's all good, but we need to know systematically and making sure we put dollars and numbers behind the things that they're promising us.
Mm-hmm. Nike, thank you. Stephanie, do you have any final thoughts, anything you want to share?
I do. To Nike's point about holding people accountable and make them work for our vote, I was so happy to see Kamala Harris be named as vice president.
Yes.
But I want to make sure that President Biden knows that that's not where it ends. That Black women are going to be responsible for switching the Senate to blue. And we want to be represented at every level of government, at every political appointee, ambassador, secretaries, all of those things that, I don't want people to hold up Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, as we've made it. There's a lot more, bills that need to be paid to African-American women in this country for getting us here.
Mm-hmm.
I want equity.
Yeah.
And I'm pushing for that. Yeah. And, Nike, I've never got a chance to tell you this to your face, but thank you for the space that you stand in. During the situation, during Freddie Gray and what came out of that, there was a lot of hate towards the young people and how they chose to show up. Even in DC, we're having it now. Mm-hmm. You are an example, and I always hold you up as the blueprint of not to point fingers and say what they're getting wrong, but come lead them and show them how to get it right. So thank you for the space that you hold and for walking in your purpose, because our village babies need you.
No, they need us, right, collectively. And me growing up, I didn't feel like the older generation wanted to pass the torch to us. It's almost as if there was a competition, right? And I'm not sure, and I think that's a part of integration and things of such a matter. Like, be careful, they're going to come and try to take things away from you. Well, we need to operate from a place of abundance. And when we have this next generation of young girls and Black men and boys who they just want access, they just want opportunities, and it's our job to pass it on to them, because they're going to be the ones who are going to be raising our children and giving them access and opportunities. And so thank you for that, Poet, for lifting me as I lift you up. And I know it's not easy being, I'm a face of media day in and day out. Same with you, Shawn, and congratulations on this amazing platform. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of this, but just make sure that we are so much stronger together than we are divided. And that's what we're doing here, celebrating each other, but more importantly, celebrating the works of our community and those who are coming behind us.
Thank you guys so much. And I want to give her a shout out, and I'm not advocating for you to vote either way, but Stephanie, thank you so much for bringing up Kamala Harris, who by the way, is also our sorority sister, but that's a whole different story. But, I mean, it is refreshing.
That's the thing with Data Sorority Incorporated.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yes, I love the, is that crimson you have on? Beautiful.
It's dark things, it's actually what it is. Stephanie and I are members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. But it's all love amongst the Divine Nine, amongst Black women in general. But what I meant was, it was just incredibly an exciting moment, as you were talking about, Stephanie, earlier, when we see women who look like us in certain positions. It inspires us to try to get there too. It's just like we heard back when Barack Obama was elected. There were my sons. You know, I have 3 Black sons, and for them to see a Black man sitting in that office said to them, "I can do that too." And so to see a Black woman who is mayor of a major city, to see a Black woman who is the face of morning radio, to see a Black woman who has started an organization to mobilize women to vote. I hold you all up and say thank you to you all for being great examples, to the women who are coming behind us, and for pushing this conversation and pushing us all forward. Thank you guys all so much for being here. I'm gonna give you all one final thing to say. I'm gonna start with you, Nike. Anything else you want to say?
No, I just want to say to the viewers who are watching us and they see us, know that we come here and we stand on the shoulders of others who've come before us. But more importantly, we have life issues and things that we're dealing with, right? And so you may see us on this platform, but life happens to us just like it happens to you. And so you may see a Stephanie Rawling-Blake, a Shawn Yancey, a Nike Robinson, Poet Taylor, who may they're doing great things. So can you, right? And it's your job and your assignment to pour into other people, and the work that you're doing will not be done in vain. So I just want to say thank you for having us. Make sure folks get out to vote. This election is so critical, and I'm looking forward to just talking about the debriefing and what's going to happen in this election.
Absolutely. Poet?
I will say to everyone in the village, we can either be our ancestors' wildest dreams or their worst nightmares. That decision rests solely on us. And I don't want you to just vote. I want you to be an informed voter. Not too many people in Ward 8 knew that one of the people running for our ANC slots had white supremacist ties. His homeboy was the one that kicked off the situation in Charlottesville. So it's not enough to just tell people, to Nike's point, to go vote. Know who you're voting for. Know what they align with. What have they done and fought for? Be an informed voter. And a reminder to be a blessing, not a bother. Think human, not labels. You are seen and you are loved. And, if you're here, it's by divine intervention, so we need you.
And that's why your name is Poet. You better come on with the poetry.
I don't think there's anything more I can say to that other than it is my pleasure to be here. First, Shawn, with you in this new endeavor. Congratulations. And with these two other amazing women that give me so much hope for the next generation. I'm claiming it. I'm Shawn. I think we're in the same generation, and I think we're looking at the next generation as so strong, and it makes me so proud about our future and very optimistic.
Absolutely. Thank you guys all so much. Let's get a cheers to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on Fancy World. Keep watching, and like everybody said here, please go to the polls if you have not already voted. Go to the polls and vote tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate it.